General Hospital. A week of quiet gambits and loud consequences. Port Charles is never still, it only pretends to be. Beneath the routine pulse of monitors and the clatter of cafeteria trays, a different rhythm throbs, calculated, relentless, almost symphonic in the way disparate motives collide and then, somehow, resolve. This week, that hidden score swells around a handful of players who carry old injuries and new intentions like pocketed knives. The through line is simple. Everyone believes they're acting for love, and everyone is also lying, to others, to themselves, and, most dangerously, to history. Jason's quiet mission. Jason Morgan steps into the fray with the same tempered stillness that has long been his signature. There's talk of a supportive intention, but that phrase is too sterile for who he is and what Britt Westbourne means to him. It isn't obligation driving him, it's a bone-deep instinct to shield someone who has learned the hard way how quickly hospital hallways can turn into tribunal corridors. If Britt is rebuilding her life one careful choice at a time, Jason is the guardrail she didn't ask for but won't refuse. He looks past her bravado, past the clinical precision she wields like armor, and sees the bruising from earlier battles that never fully faded. The city is dotted with ghosts, and Jason is determined that none of them will reach her. That vow becomes complicated when the shadows lengthen around Jack Brennan. Brennan isn't just a name, he's an atmosphere, cool, convincing, the kind of man who makes a threat sound like an invitation. Jason knows that if the storm gathers, it won't hit politely. Protecting Britt means anticipating that weather pattern, mapping every gust and lightning strike before they arrive. It means deciding whom to trust and whom to tolerate. It also means noticing when someone else is moving pieces behind the board. Carly's shadow game. Carly never does anything small. Her loyalty is fervent, and her methods can be ruthlessly creative, especially when creative is a softer word for dangerous. The city has convinced itself that Carly's only currency is confrontation, but the people who know her best understand she prefers leverage. If she's urging a test of faith around Britt, it is not because she doubts Jason's read, it's because she is triangulating. Carly is a strategist disguised as a tempest, and Brennan is a target that requires both. Proving Britt's reliability may be just one tile in a mosaic that ends with Brennan's facade cracking in the daylight. To operate at that altitude, Carly needs information, deniable and timely. She has never been sentimental about the sources of her intel. Moral purity is a luxury Port Charles rarely affords. But her push is telling. She expects the truth to act like solvent on the lies binding Brennan's alliances together. If Britt passes the test, Carly gains a co-signer on Jason's instincts and a clinical mind she can trust. If Britt balks, Carly learns just as much. Either way, Carly's questions are never only questions, they are probes designed to map the fault lines no one else has seen. Spinelli's heart at risk. Across town, Damian Spinelli is running a different kind of calculus, one with variables that don't fit into code. Insecurity, memory, and the shape of a family when it's stretched by time. Spinelli's genius has always been certainty wrapped in whimsy. But James West is not a system he can debug, and the return of Nathan West has pulled every old thread loose at once. Nathan's presence is the paradox, a miracle and a threat, a reunion that opens doors while rattling hinges. The boy who knows Spinelli's laughter may now be learning the timbre of a father's voice he only carried as a story. Jason's involvement here is softer, less tactical and more pastoral. He recognizes the panic under Spinelli's jokes, the way men who fix things are helpless when they must simply wait. The irony is brutal. Spinelli worries about being replaced while trying not to be selfish about a child's right to know his father. There's no algorithm for how love reassigns itself when history changes overnight. And yet, in the ledger of Jason's week, helping Spinelli steady his ground belongs on the same line as neutralizing Brennan, because in Port Charles, the heart is never collateral, it is the whole war. Lulu and Nathan. Learning to breathe again. If loss is a language, Lulu and Nathan are fluent. She woke from a coma to a life that had kept moving. He returned from amnesia to a past that refused to be theoretical. They do not trade in platitudes. Instead, they exchange recognition, the quiet relief of being understood by someone who knows what it means to miss milestones you can't name, to parent a child whose memories of you are antiques pulled from the attic. Lulu meets Nathan where he is, not where nostalgia wants him to be. She knows the shape of his questions before he asks them, the frictions of reconciling the man he was with the man he had to become to survive not knowing himself. And there, at the crossbeam of their pain, stands Maxie, best friend, former lover, co-parent, anchor and lightning rod in equal measure. Lulu's loyalty to Maxie is not a conflict, it's a compass. She wants Nathan to connect with James, not as a gesture to the past but as an investment in a future neither of them can predict. That future is not a single moment of reunion, but a tangle of small rituals, school pickups, awkward dinners, minor disasters that become private jokes. The drama of return gets the headlines, the miracle is in the mundane they're trying to rebuild. Michael's calculus. Meanwhile, Michael Corinthos is doing the thing everyone swears they hate and secretly admires. He's turning desperation into plan. He tells himself it's principled, that keeping his world intact justifies a strategy that would look unseemly if he weren't so convinced of the stakes. Enter Jacinda, a woman who was certain about herself until her relationship with Drew tore the map in half. Michael presents her with an equation that is half business proposal, half lifeline. Pretend to fit into a story he needs to sell, and in return, he'll make sure neither of them drowns in the fallout of choices already made. Jacinda flinches at the transactional label, who wouldn't? Being an alibi for someone else's damage is a brutal kind of intimacy, and she's right to question whether proximity to Michael's orbit is a cure or a contagion. But Michael isn't bargaining with romance, he's bargaining with leverage, and in Port Charles that's a more honest commodity. He sells her on practicality, on the way appearance buys time while truth is still negotiating its terms. His pitch isn't that this will feel good, it's that it will keep something worse from happening. And sometimes, that's enough to tip the scale. Jacinda at the crossroads. Jacinda's ambivalence is the hinge on which the scheme swings. She has reason to mistrust paper-thin arrangements dressed up as rescue. What Michael calls strategy, she hears as an admission that his life requires scheduled illusions to stabilize. After Drew, she promised herself no more arrangements that flatten her into function. And yet, she's also pragmatic. Port Charles punishes those who insist on pure motives. If she says yes, it won't be for the money, it will be for the agency. She'll write her own conditions, define the edges, and refuse to let the role consume her identity. If she says no, the refusal will be its own declaration, that there are some storms she will not allow to name her. The city has seen this play before, a woman asked to perform a performance so convincing it leaks into the real. The difference is that Jacinda knows the script and the cost. Whether she steps onto Michael's stage or not, she will make sure the choice belongs to her, and that, in Port Charles, is a revolution. # Drew and Veronica. Enemies to leverage. Then there is Drew, a man who keeps discovering that every bridge he burned was secretly load-bearing. His temper has been a poor accountant, spending credibility far faster than he can earn it back. Veronica Bard enters as both temptation and test. Can he convince a woman he publicly disparaged that they have common cause? The pitch is as delicate as it is audacious. He offers her position, intel, and the unspoken admission that he should have known better before he opened his mouth. Veronica listens because she is not naive. The people who insist they don't need allies are the least trustworthy. Better to work with a man who can confess a miscalculation than one who would rather set the city on fire than apologize. Veronica's skepticism is an asset, not a barrier. She understands the currency of rumor and the premium on reputation inside General Hospital's walls. Accepting Drew's proposal would tie her to a man with volcanic enemies. Refusing him would hand those same enemies uncontested ground. So she does what survivors do, she names her price. If she helps him, it will be with conditions that make backstabbing logistically expensive. She will not be a pawn, she will be a rook, straight lines, long range, and the power to alter the board with a single move. # The hospital as chessboard. General Hospital itself steps forward as a character this week, the way it often does when personnel decisions conceal strategy. A job offer extends to a figure who polarizes a room. Call her Ronnie, call her Veronica, call her necessary. The appointment is not merely administrative, it is kinetic. Hiring her means importing a network, rebalancing alliances, and granting a woman with a taste for policy the authority to weaponize procedure. In a city where the OR can become a courtroom and the lobby doubles as a press room, there is no such thing as a neutral promotion. For some, her arrival promises reform, cleaner procurement, saner staffing, fewer shadow favors traded on night shifts. For others, it threatens audit-level scrutiny on traditions they've long used to hide a variety of sins. Whether she's a reformer or a retribution artist depends on where you're standing when the memo lands. Either way, the hospital is the board, and this hire is the piece that makes everyone recalculate their next 3 moves. # Convergences. The wonder of Port Charles is not that its stories intertwine, it's how they reframe each other when they do. Jason's watch over Britt becomes more urgent if Carly's probe rattles Brennan's hive. Spinelli's fear of being displaced finds an unlikely balm in Nathan's humility and Lulu's steadiness. Michael's arrangement looks less like cynicism if Jacinda is allowed to define it on her terms. Drew's bid for alliance feels less like desperation if Veronica demands, and gets, an equal seat at the table. Every strand tightens the others. Every choice edits a different scene across town. And somewhere in the middle of all this, a child waits for a father to keep a promise, a doctor checks a chart twice because focus is an ethics all its own, and a woman in a corner office drafts an email that will turn into a war no one can ever prove started with a comma in the wrong place. # What comes next? If there's a theme to this chapter, it's recalibration. Port Charles is full of people who have made a religion of certainty. Now, each of them is being asked to consider uncertainty as a tactic rather than a threat. Jason must trust that protection sometimes means delegation. Carly must decide whether information is a bridge or an accelerant. Spinelli must believe that love can expand without evicting anyone. Lulu and Nathan must accept that the past is not a museum, it is raw material for a new structure with different doors. Michael must own the cost of strategies that save him while compromising others. Jacinda must choose the definition of dignity she can live with. Drew must learn the difference between allyship and acquisition. Veronica must remember that power only counts if it survives the fallout. The city breathes in. The monitors beep. The cafeteria runs out of coffee again because no one remembered to reorder. Life insists on its banalities even when the plot thickens. But anyone paying attention can feel it. The hospital is a drum, and this week it's beating toward confrontation. When the first collision comes, whether it's a boardroom vote that detonates old grudges, a hallway confession that changes 3 lives at once, or an unrelated paperwork correction that exposes a network of favors, no one will be able to claim surprise. They designed this convergence themselves, set their pieces, ran their mouth or held their tongue at strategic moments. The consequences have merely kept pace. And yet, there is grace in the mess. Port Charles is at its most human when its heroes and anti-heroes admit that none of them are purely anything. Jason can be gentle and implacable. Carly can be protective and punishing. Spinelli can be brilliant and terrified. Lulu can be resolute and aching. Nathan can be grateful and overwhelmed. Michael can be noble and transactional. Jacinda can be wounded and unbreakable. Drew can be contrite and calculating. Veronica can be fair and formidable. The hospital can be both sanctuary and stage. So they go on, all of them, pretending routine is enough to keep the chaos polite, even as they privately brace for the moment when pretending is no longer an option. In that second, when motives finally show themselves and masks slide just enough to betray the outline of the person beneath, Port Charles will do what it always does: judge, forgive, relitigate, repeat. Until then, the city hums with potential energy, and every glance down a corridor feels like the moment right before the curtain rises. Because it is.